Okay, today we're going to talk about voice versus dialect. So when we talked in class about voice, we said voice is the narrator's word choice in a story. So we have to remember who is the narrator. It could be one of two people. It could be the author, if it's third person point of view, or it could be the main character if it's first person point of view. So you have to first determine who is the narrator. And to do that, you have to look at point of view. So voice is the narrator's word choice in a story. Okay, when we think word choice, we have to think about what they're saying and how they're saying it. So we have to think about their thoughts, their feelings, what they're saying, and again, how are they saying it? Is it clear? Do we understand? And chances are we might not if we don't understand, then it's not very clear, it's not a very good voice. But if it is clear and we do understand it and we can get what's going on eventually, then it is a good voice. So again, voice is the narrator's word choice in a story. Thoughts and feelings are expressed. It's what they say and how they say it. Also with voice, you can talk about how the narrator directly talks to the audience, which is called conversational voice. So if the narrator feels like they're talking to you, like you're sitting there with them having a conversation, then that is what we call conversational voice, if they're talking directly to you in the story. So look at our example. And this is from the story Jeremiah's Song. It says, he looked like his skin got loosed on his bones, and it hung down like he was just wearing it instead of it being a part of him. So thinking about this voice, we want to think about what kind of words or phrases does the narrator use to describe this character that he's talking about. We can look at how his skin got loosed, which we don't say loosed, we say loose. But in this dialect, which we're going to talk about in a second, he says loose. So we can picture that. We can also picture it hanging down on him, like he was just wearing it instead of it being a part of him. So all of these things right here help us get a good voice of what the narrator is trying to say. We can definitely tell what's happening and how it's happening and what this person looks like. It's very clear. We get the picture. We see it in our head. So again, voice is narrator's word choice in a story. Thoughts and feelings are expressed. How they say it, what they say it. So remember, when we think voice, we think speaking, talking. But like I said in class, since the narrator can't actually sit down and talk to us in physical form, they have to talk to us using their word choice. So again, looking at our example, he looked like his skin got loosed on his bones and it hung down like he was just wearing it instead of it being a part of him. We get what this character looks like and how they look, and it doesn't paint a very good picture in our head, so that lets us know that the word choice here, or the voice that the narrator is using, is very clear because we understand. Okay, the next part of our lesson is about dialect. Remember when we talked in class about dialect, we said dialect is how someone speaks in the story. And here, well, dialect in general, like outside of language arts class, dialect is just how somebody speaks. But specifically in literature, dialect is how someone, the character, speaks in a story. So you're focusing on how the dialogue is written. So as you're reading conversation in your book, you can tell someone's dialect from the way the author writes the dialogue. Okay, so what can dialect tell us? What can that tell us about a character? That can tell us a few things. That could tell us where they're from. So it could tell us what country they're from. So Americans definitely have an American accent. British people have a British accent. Australian people have an Australian accent. So it can tell us where they are from in the world. It can also tell us where they're from in the United States, because even though we all live in the United States and we all speak English, there's still different dialects or accents in the United States depending on where we're from. And like we did with our activity in class, listening to the different dialects and trying to figure out where they're from in the United States, we all sound a little bit different, and we talked about how it was the vowel sound. So a dialect can tell us where they're from. A dialect can also tell us about their culture background, depending on how they speak. It can also tell us about your family background or about your educational background. It could not. So those are several things a dialect can tell us about a character. This is one of the major parts in characterization, looking at how they talk. So let's look at our example. You ain't never had no book learning, Jeremiah. So this dialect that the author is using in this reflects a speech pattern in some communities in the South United States. So this could be this, if we were looking at this and we were thinking about where is this person from, people that talk like this are normally around the southern part, so that tells us where we are. That helps us with setting, which dialect can also help us with setting. It reflects a style of speaking that's informal. So we wouldn't probably talk like this to our principal or our teachers. It would be something that we would say to our friends, our family members, and it includes non-standard grammar, meaning you ain't never had no book learning. So we know we don't use double negatives in a sentence. So if we were speaking with good grammar, we wouldn't say you ain't never. We would say you haven't ever, or you ain't had no, even though ain't isn't good grammar. But anyway. So what the author is actually saying, so what is actually being said using this dialect is, you've never gone to school, Jeremiah. So what we need to take from this is that we have our example here, which tells us where they're from. It tells us they're from the South. It tells us about their culture. It doesn't tell us a little bit about their background. It does tell us about education, but it also tells us that this is a very informal way of talking. So chances are they're talking to a friend or brother or sister. They're probably not talking to their boss or something like that. But when we talked in class about clarifying, so if this doesn't make sense to us, that you ain't never had no book learning, we have to sit and figure out, okay, what is the author really saying through the dialect? And what the author is really saying is, you've never gone to school, Jeremiah. So again, just to review, dialect is how the character speaks in a story, and it can tell us many different things. So you can look at someone's dialect, or hear someone's dialect if you're talking to them, and it can tell you a lot about them. It can also help you try to figure out like what they're actually saying and be problem solvers. So again, that's dialect and voice.